One and a two and a long box punk. Long box punk. Long box punk. Long box punk.
And just like that, my friends, we are into a brand new live stream right here on Longbox Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. I am the punk, and I'm joined by post-punk former and returning creator extraordinaire, Jon, my dude. Thanks for hanging out with me again on a Sunday evening as we head into spooky season. Feels like the perfect time to be talking about C.P.S.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I know I had to book like 7 years out, so and I was like, oh my god, when I saw it on the calendar, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right.
I know. As I was looking through all of our emails earlier, it was like, oh man, we scheduled this in like April, and you're asking about August, and that was already booked. And so here we are. We made it. So you've got an active campaign. We're going to get into child possession services, this fourth and final issue for this at least first season that's planned. We're going to get into all sorts of stuff. We're going to talk horror because it's in the name of your book, Possession. I want to talk possessions with you. But first, like for those that missed the first time you were on the show, I get it. I've grown a decent amount in the last year. How'd you get into comics? Like, what's your origin story? How did this all start for you?
Well, my origin story is that my grandmother used to read comics like Betty Boop and Richie Rich, and she just happened to have a comic shop near the office that she worked at. And she was either watching us or hanging out with us one day and said, hey, let's bring the grandkids in there. I think I was about 11 years old. I believe the first comic I grabbed off the rack was Amazing Spider-Man 332, where Venom's kind of jumping at, right at the reader, which is Spider-Man. And I was hooked, ever since. I was like, who is this reverse Spider-Man on the cover? And just kind of went digging. Then I found out there was things called back issues. And thankfully I had a grandmother and a mother who would take me every other week or so to check it out, give me a couple bucks. And I've been a reader since.
That's awesome. When did you like make the switch from reading and enjoying to writing and creating?
Well, I honestly never saw myself really as a creator. When I got to the age in high school and, early college where you started to realize, oh, wait, there's creative teams and they, work together and the artist does this and the writer does that and there's letterer. I was just like, okay, that's a thing that happens. It was actually my older brother who was the one who would get the blank sketchbooks and make his own stories, his knockoff Rob Liefeld Youngblood characters. And he would tell me the stories and stuff. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. I just was never a thing I thought I would do until I got into my mid-20s and I was in a band and things were kind of winding down in that regard, getting ready to be an older man and have a family and all that. I was, kind of thinking, well, what creative outlet could I do next? And, I found some people in the long ago, there used to be things called message boards on the internet where we would go and we would chat about common things we had and things we had in common. And I found a great one in the 11 o'clock comics podcast message board. Saw that there was all these awesome creators. It's just like, yeah, it's really, it's easier than people think. You kind of write your own stories, you put them online now as web comics, or you print them yourself. I was like, all right, let me give it a shot. I posted, hey, does anybody want to collaborate? And my now longtime, creative partner and friend Bob Ornelas, he answered that post, and much to his chagrin, probably now we've been working together, including creating C.P.S. together. 15 or so odd years later.
That's wild. I love that. Like you just reached out on a forum and found Bob Gar, but also like the two of you have stuck together. Cause I was looking, I'm so glad you mentioned him. When I was looking at the Kickstarter page, I saw that it was co-created. C.P.S. was co-created by you, by Bob Gar, and by is it just Matta?
Yeah.
Matta? But then looking at like the arts, colors, stories, letters, it's just you and Matt listed and it's not Bob Gar. And I was curious, like, how does that work? Was he part of the like spitball idea creation and then you did the like grunt work of sitting and typing and scripting and all that stuff?
Yep. Pretty much. He definitely, when he needed a story for an anthology he was doing, and he asked me, did I have one? And I kind of pitched the idea of a social worker for possessed children, which is what C.P.S. is about. But at first it was like a knockoff of John Constantine. Actually, her name was even Constantina because Bob loves John Constantine.
Yeah.
He got me into reading Constantine, and I was like, oh, we'll just do this funny one-off. She actually had a British accent at first. So I threw together the script, and, it was crass and rude because, she's, like Constantine doesn't give an F or whatever.
Yeah.
And Bob's like, well, wait a minute. I think you actually have something here. And what if we change her ethnicity? And what if we make her, an American kind of out of her, family of origin element? And that was just a huge part to the story. And then we just kept bouncing ideas. He had a million ideas. A lot of the characters are his. So he's definitely was all about the beginning creation. Even that there's a little girl in the story that's a demon inside a body she can't get out of. Her name is Jocelyn. That was all Bob. He's like, he just kind of created this character. And, we really built it together. But unfortunately, Bob, he's a husband. He's got a full-time job. We got to a point where it was like, yeah, John, I see that you kind of want to do longer stories and more. And, he just couldn't keep up the pace anymore. So he kind of gave his blessing. It wasn't, I was ready just to kind of call it quits on it because I knew it would be hard to find another creator.
Yeah.
But that's where Mata came along. We met, through this wonderful world called the internet. I read her, awesome comic Sacrimony, and she kind of is doing a slice of life fantasy story in there, much like ours. Of course, there's a bigger world behind it, but she kind of keeps to that street level, relationships and crass humor. And I just knew she'd be a good pick. So I said, well, if I can find the right person, we'll continue in the story. And then Mata was all about it. She was all excited. She adds her own ideas. So she's very much, I thought it was important at this point to note her as a co-creator in all this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great way too of like just seeing how relationships with collaborators, evolve over time is, it might start super like everybody's in a blender and you don't know where one starts and one ends. And, things might change or more ingredients might get added or some gets poured out or whatever. But like continuing on to carry the story forward with the characters and the world that was originally created, but then letting it grow and breathe. Like I would think that as a creator, it would be tough to like let go of the thing and like, hey, I loved creating this. But you take it now. Like, have there been times where you've reached out to Bob like, hey, here's what we came up with, like feedback? Do you have any thoughts? Like, or is he still involved with any of the creation, or is it just like this was his original like involvement with creating it?
I mean, honestly, he's not as involved as I would like him to be. Life is doesn't always line up for everybody to have time to do these crazy things. But he definitely, gives his blessing. He, gives us feedback on the issues. But at this point, he's kind of co-created the characters and he's okay with us, continuing the story on.
Cool. Did you work with any of the other stories that Part-Time has put out with him, or was this the like primary one that you worked on with him?
This was the primary one. This launched Part-Time Comics. It was our, first book that we put out. Bob and I worked together for about 10 years at another company that he started called King Bone Press. And, I obviously wanted him to be a big part of this. He's also worked on a series called Depowered for Part-Time Comics with us.
Okay.
He was the co-creator of that as well. But similarly to that, like Depowered, again, I had a bigger story. His ability to create pages was not, it was not going to fit that arc. So he again was like, you do what you got to do. So some of that goes into these stories too, because I always want Bob to be part of most of the projects that I do. He was the first one I worked with. When I kind of see stories in my head, I see a lot of Bob's art. We've worked on so many, dozens of projects together at this point.
Yeah.
But sometimes, again, life doesn't line up, and we put some of that in the book too. Sometimes the disappointment and fractured relationships you can kind of use that to write a good story, because sometimes life doesn't go the way you always want it.
Yeah. Yeah. It turns out sometimes when you like rip open the rib cage of pain, it actually turns into a really good story.
And Bob is also the co-creator of one of our other, probably our one of our all-time best-selling series, Bulletproof Chicken. He and I created together. So he's definitely, his fingerprints are all over all the stories that we do.
Yeah, that's great. I know I am a big fan. Like Drumsticks of Doom was the series that brought me into part-time. And then just kind of got comfortable hanging out with all of your stories. How before we dig into like do the deep dive on CPS, like how does part-time put out, you said you're doing 5 Kickstarters this year. Like you've got several series that are all in different issues and like in different parts of the story. You're wrapping up CPS now, but like how in the world do you balance all of this stuff?
The answer to that is I balance it poorly, but somehow, you get it over the line. If I lean back a little here, you can kind of see the
boxes, man.
Boxes, there's tape in the background for shipping. It's just like a mess. And, when I used to do this early on, I would gussy up the office and be like, oh, I got to be professional. But at this point, y'all know who I am. It's just like, this is the way it's got to work, be comfortable with chaos.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think that's my strength, right? I can balance a lot of plates. I can keep things moving, checking in with artists, pay an artist here, email one there, get a cover artist secured, do lettering, get the Kickstarter campaign. You have to be comfortable bouncing to all those different things as they're needed. Thankfully, I will say 5 is kind of the limit. I've definitely found that out. So this will be the last one for the year. Then we'll kind of get back into writing and getting stories ready for next year and take a step back and make sure that, I get all these boxes out behind me. I'm actually in the midst of shipping the 4th campaign as the other one's live. So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
And to further confuse and create chaos, you do the like hold my shipping thing of like, here's the list of the stuff for the year. If you're going to back multiple, which I love as a backer, because I'm like, hell yeah, save me on shipping. But as the creator that's shipping all that stuff, like how in the world do you keep, like, I saw that and I was like, yes, this is awesome. Oh my God, what is he doing? Like, how in the world do you keep track of all that stuff? I don't understand. It's not how my brain works. I have a single box of like leftover shipping supplies and like the tape and all the things, and it's neatly stacked and packed. And I want gone. Like, I don't want it here because I look at it and I'm like, did I forget to send something out? Why do I still have so many things left over? What? Did I do that right? Like, I'm constantly second guessing.
You and I would definitely not work well together. I literally under my right elbow where I'm sitting, I have one order, and right in front of me while we're talking, I have another order, and over here I have some other books. The long and the short of it again is that I do it somewhat poorly, but I'm not afraid to make mistakes, and my backers will reach out and they'll let me know. The hold my shipping, thankfully, Kickstarter has some good software behind the scenes where you can kind of check where they're at in the process, so I can easily move them to in progress. Then when I look up that Kickstarter, I go, oh, these 5 are still need to be shipped out. Let's see if they back this Kickstarter. I have like 17 tabs open while I ship stuff, so I can check all the old Kickstarters. And then did I owe them something from another campaign? Did they email me?
Yeah.
I've got like lists written down, and stuff like that. But I've made some mistakes too. I've had, oops, I missed your hold my shipping. Now I have to ship it to him twice. So that was on me. Yeah. Things happen. You gotta kind of roll with it and kind of limit those as much as you can, but not get too down if you make a mistake. And again, I have amazing, supportive people that'll say, hey, John, no worries. I'll back you again next year, throw it in there. And that's helpful.
Yeah, for sure. It absolutely is. I had one person that I was so excited to like package and ship everything out that I forgot to lock addresses before I did that. And so like I had everything printed. The UPS guy had already picked everything up because I now work in a warehouse. And so like my boss was like, dude, just ship everything from here. They're coming anyway. Like just let them pick it up. I was like, you're smart. And so he picked up the whole box. And after the UPS driver left, I texted Chris, my collaborator, and I was like, yo, books are officially on the road. And then I got an email that said someone changed their address. And I was like, oh no. And so I messaged him like, hey, I jumped the gun. Luckily, he was like, oh, that's just my parents' house. Like, I just got a new apartment, whatever. And I was like, okay, so like we're cool. He was like, yeah, no, we're totally cool. I was like, great, awesome. But
Perfect.
yeah, like there's something to be said about just being, I think, honest about it. Of like, hey, whoops. I'm human, like you're human, so am I. I'm trying to do a lot of things. And I think people, as a reader, I've always given way more grace than a lot of people that I see in the angry comments on Kickstarter of like, I know stuff happens, right? Like there's going to be snafus. There's going to be issues with printers or customs delays or whatever. Like, okay, I'm willing to just be like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. If I wanted to, get it immediately, I would just wait until you had already made the thing and then buy it from your website.
Right.
But like that's the chaos and beauty of kickstarting stuff is like you just never know. There's always something. So but in those instances, like just be honest is all I can
Yeah.
ask for. And so as
And
a creator
I
now,
haven't had anyone like angrily send me an email. I'm never backing it. I'm sure privately some people were like, listen, you sent a book, it got bent, or you sent the wrong thing, and they just, there could be those people out there, but
sure.
it's the amount of overwhelmingly supportive that say, hey, man, what can we do to make this right? I've had damaged items. Hey, let's contact USPS, get that all corrected. Those things happen. The by and large, the people coming on this platform, I think you're right, kind of come in with the attitude that you have. And, you may get some that don't, and that's okay. That'll happen. But, you just, again, you got to limit it, not take it too personal. If somebody's upset and just try and do your best each time.
Yeah, that's kind of my motto to life. Like I'm just going to do my best, and if people don't like it, okay.
Right.
So tell me about Child's Possession Services. Like where in the hell did this idea come from? Of all, and then like what's it about the series so far, and give me all the things.
So it was kind of two separate things. I'm a social worker by day. I had this kind of kernel of an idea of a social worker who worked with kids who were possessed. What would that look like, And then again, being approached by Bob and him needing a story, I said, well, this is kind of the story I have. And again, it was two parts. It was a mock-up Constantine story, and then it was a social work story. Once I put them together, I was like, oh, these will work better together. And then again, thankfully, if you work with much smarter people, they'll steer you in the right direction. So it was really Bob who said, I think there's a little more on here. And it was actually him because, to be honest with you, before Connie, I've never written a story that's a female lead. I've had mixed feelings about that, not being female myself, not identifying that way. I've definitely had female characters in stories, but to make a story that's going to really center around a female lead who is not always good intentioned, how would that be received from a male writer? So I wanted to be respectful about that. And it's Bob who again said, she should be from India, and we can kind of work that into, how her background plays into why, she's able to, do certain things better than others in her field. And then it was really bringing in people from my past who I had met who have a different background than me. Once I kind of had that real seed of like, I can connect it to people I've actually met, two wonderful coworkers I've met in this wonderful wild world of social work that, both had their struggles. Both were in arranged marriages that did not work. Both were very much mistreated. Both are very much, their parents had a different parenting style than I grew up with. The pressure that was put on them to succeed, to be married, to be successful in that aspect of their life, more than acknowledging the wonderful human beings they were, the amazing social workers that they were. Once Bob made the suggestion that he should be of that background, and then I could link it to, a personal story, which I won't reveal the people's names or anything like that.
Sure.
Then I felt like I had something genuine that I could put into the story, and it wasn't just like, haha, she's funny, she swears, and she's she's kind of loose with her sexual activities. This will be great. This was more of a, now I kind of have a real world example I can pull from, and why, she might be going, so far over the edge. So And I also thought there's just not enough stories where, we throw the term around a lot of times, strong female lead. I don't think we often give the female lead enough time to not be strong either, in the
Mm,
sense of, being kind of an anti-hero of sorts. So that, when Bob and I talked about it, I think we were very much on the same page that we wanted her to kind of be, that Wolverine, Constantine type of, go after yourself type of person,
yeah. Yeah. And it's so fascinating that you bring up the like talking with coworkers to get their experiences and then bringing those into the story. Like that's real life research. That anytime I think of like researching for writing, I'm like, oh yeah, Google and stuff, right? Like that's how you do research. And then, but to actually, like, I wouldn't have thought about, I don't even want to get close to having like a prominent female lead. Like in our story, we've got a female character, and it's more or less like we know characteristics, but again, like I'm not a girl. I don't know what her life experiences would be like being in a band that's in the punk scene and all that stuff. And I don't know anybody personally that is and has been in the punk scene as I feel like, so it's harder for me to then think like, oh, I can just talk to so and so about the thing to get her experience. Like, what do you do like for Band on the Silver Mountain and Drumsticks of Doom in general? Like, what do you do in that case when you're writing both male and female characters?
I think in the case of Band on the Silver Mountain, how I try to, I will say I was raised by women. My mom was essentially a single woman. I have an older sisters. She's the oldest sibling. And
Okay.
I was, very close to my grandmother. So I do feel like, again, I can't assume that role. And I definitely respect anyone who says, well, you're a male writer, so that, I'm not going to pick up your book based on that. But I don't shy away from that. I've always felt that I've kind of had that background in my life, that perspective. Again,
Mm,
I did not get much of a male role models growing up. So mine were always, strong women.
yeah.
So that's kind of where I started. But also when you're part of a scene, so to speak, for a long time, when it's a huge part of your life, in the case of Drumsticks of Doom, I also understand that there's stuff you love about being a scene. That's why you're part of it, right? Whether it's the comic
Mhm.
scene or the punk scene or the heavy metal scene. But there's also, there's darker parts of that scene, right? And
Yeah.
in our scene in heavy metal, I was witness to, and whether it was through dating or just being around other men or going to shows, uh, I knew that in Drumsticks of Doom, the lead should be a woman because that scene is not always welcoming to women. So that's a big part of
Mm,
the signal that I'm trying to send with this book, is that um, we aren't always the best in metal, and we haven't historically. I think we've come a long way, and I think nowadays it's much more common to welcome women into the scene, but it
yeah.
wasn't then. So that's a big part of that part of Drumsticks of Doom, where it's not drawn from a real person. It's drawn from very real scenarios that women share all the time in the heavy metal scene.
Mm,
And all the songs written about women and all
yeah.
that stuff too. So
Yeah.
that's where that one comes a little bit differently, but still, again, feeling like I had a real place to come from, rather than just, hey, here's a cute chick who's going to play drums,
Right. Right.
which, is also cool.
I mean, but right. Like for a second though, like who doesn't love a cute chick that's playing drums? So I
That was
mean,
part of it too. Now again, there's lots of women playing drums, but in my
yeah.
days in the 80s and 90s, we didn't see that enough. So why not? Let's add
Yeah.
some more. Let's add some more women drummers to the world of fiction.
Yep. Yeah. See, and that's why Sarah ended up in our book being the bass player, because I was like, I don't know. I feel like I don't typically see badass bassists that are women. Like that would be cool. That'd be a great combo. Like give her an edgy haircut, give her all the things, and like have her be the one that's keeping these boys in line because they're just acting like stupid boys because we're boys and we're all stupid. So like leaning into that aspect of it, of like, she's the sheep herder of the band, is just like, it's just fun to play around with, right? Like it's, that's part of the beauty of creating, is you get to just make up these things that happen and just see what happens with the characters. It was always a very like weird idea for me of like, yeah, we're just going to see what happens with these characters that I'm creating. It's like, no, you're going to see what happens. Like, what are you talking about? And it's like, yeah, no, things just like need to happen in the story once you get the bones for it. And I didn't understand that until I really started getting serious about writing more. And then it was like, oh, I'm about to kill everybody. Damn, there's no way around this. Like, I need that to happen. Okay. So speaking on the like things needing to happen, I mentioned it beforehand, but like I read, I don't know if it was in an update or your Substack, or it was somewhere that I read that you had said that this fourth issue of CPS is the finale for this first, we're calling a season, arc, story, whatever. And that, like, you know, if it comes back later, cool, but like this was the ending that you felt like needed to happen. How did you arrive there at like, this is the finale for this first story, and like this is where I set it aside and focus on the other comics that I've got?
Well, first and foremost, it wasn't like I sat down and had a Bible for CPS. I definitely leave my stories a little more open nowadays. I've definitely written stories where, as a not having much experience, I kind of wrote myself into a corner, or was like, oh God, now I've introduced 10 characters. It would take me 10 years to finish this, and had to abandon those stories. So I do try to be a little bit loose with the not picking exact things, you know, like if I had said, you know, Connie, you are prophesized to be the next, you know, queen of hell or something like that, and then I had to pay that story off, that probably would have been a mistake. So let's leave it a little open, let the relationships develop, and then see where their natural arc is. So again, part of that's working with, you know, good collaborators who can kind of keep you under control and not let the story, you know, get out of hand.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a bigger story for Connie. Again, I might not have had mapped out 60 issues or anything, but I definitely had examples of where I wanted these relationships to go and different stories. And much like Connie's career in the book, the career of CPS didn't exactly go where I wanted it to be. And again, even though that's a bummer, I think that, again, you can utilize that to say CPS is a lot about making career choices, you know, much like myself as a young social worker, think you're going to jump in and change the world, and then finding out real quick that the world has other ideas that are going to get in the way.
Yeah.
That was really part of CPS's start. It's kind of a mask for some behind the scenes in the world of being a helping professional, you know, told in a, you know, farcical, fantastical world.
Sure.
So we focus more on that anyways. You know, there wasn't like a big hero's journey or this battle she was going to take, but there is relationship payoffs I wanted to pay off in the story. And again, kind of had an idea where I wanted the arc to go. But again, in kind of leaving yourself some room and not overcommitting in earlier issues, I gave it an opportunity to wrap up for now. And after issue 1 came out, hot, first series for Part-Time Comics, funded easily, you know, tons of backers. And then again, maybe choices, and I take most of the responsibility. Choices I made, balancing too many things at once, not maybe focusing on this story. Next issue comes out a year later, the response is less. Third issue comes out, again, it's a struggle. So read the writing on the wall and say, okay, for now, we're going to take our foot off the brake. And then if this picks up steam later, there's more stories there. But if it doesn't, you've given anyone who has invested in it, you know, a satisfying ending to this first arc. And again, I hope that people will turn that last page and go, oh crap, now where we could have went next is we do want this. And then, you know, we'll see, you know, you get a couple hundred readers, you know, at conventions or on Global Comics. And then you're like, okay, we can start planning season 2 for Connie. But yeah, some of that's just being a little more experienced now and saying, okay, you have bigger ideas, be realistic and see if you can get through this first arc. And then if there's, you know, a huge demand, jump back into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of the like well-seasoned aspect of it, like, are there other learnings that you've had through not just CPS, but like all of Part-Time Comics that you've kind of learned the hard way, that now as you approach either new stories or new issues that you're like, oh, I got to do this because that happened to me on campaign 7 and I don't want to repeat that mistake?
Yep. A big part of that was early in Part-Time Comics career, we had some early success. Our first campaigns were great. The third one was depowered and did not fund, and probably had one of my lower backer totals I've had in the last, at that time, you know, 10 or 11 years. And instead of again, seeing the writing on the wall, slowing down a little bit, maybe focusing on finishing or getting, at that time, Drumsticks hadn't even come out yet. Maybe saying, okay, let's switch to this book and then come back to Depowered. I said, no, this book is done. All the art's done. I really want it to come out. So then instead of relaunching, I launched an Indiegogo, and that failed. And then I went to a pre-order on my website, and that did okay, but it was nowhere near where the book. And again, being stubborn, at that time, that put us really behind for the next 2 years, because I was always scrambling because I never got back in the black for Depowered. And that's not an admonishment of anybody backing the books or didn't back, and definitely not an admonishment of the creative team. Again, that's on me. That's my part as a publisher, is to market the book, get it out there, get it funded, make sure it rolls smoothly, and not be so stubborn in the face of again, I think our audience was telling us, you know what, we're not as much of us are into this superhero story you're telling. Maybe shift gears back, to the supernatural stuff. And again, with C.P.S, I said, okay, you saw it with issue 2. Now you're really seeing it in issue 3. Let's give them a satisfying ending now. And then again, we can go to trade, and then that might do different in trade. It might, maybe that becomes our hottest book, and you're like, okay, people want the full story, so let's see how we can make that happen. Yeah. So yes, definitely learning from others. And then again, my 10-year career at Kingbone Press with Bob, we had a lot of ups and downs, books we trying to publish too many at once, or doing multiple campaigns in a year. So you have to kind of learn. And again, sometimes we get stubborn and we say, no, this is a good book. I like it and I want it to come out. But there is a financial aspect to it. And if you don't respect that, you slow everything else down.
Yeah. It turns out money, it takes money to make comics. It's weird, man.
Yeah. You've heard me talk about it all the time. I'm fortunate. I have a day job. I do well. My wife does okay. We're doing all right. So it's not my bread and butter, but I do take pride in paying my artists on time, making sure they're getting it. And of course, I don't want to take away from what my family is building, and my wife be upset. What you spent this much making a book. We don't want it. We do that either. Yeah. But I also don't need every penny right now. I know it's a long-term goal. So as long as I'm kind of realistic, again, it's a long-term goal for me. Each Kickstarter doesn't have to do 10 grand. You can do a little here, then a little at conventions, and then a little online, and then a little in the trade. And then, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, like, having realistic goals and not expecting like, oh, I'm going to make a comic and I'm going to, be able to quit my day job and only make comics full time. Yes, that's the few and very far outliers that do that or find that success. Because I think the vast majority of people, even that I've talked to, as are like, yeah, man, I'm not doing this because I'm getting rich. Like, I'm doing this because I love creating and I like making comics. And so I'm going to I got to tell stories anyway. And now that I've felt that adrenaline and endorphin rush when, I see words that I wrote come out into a comic book page, and then being able to hold a thing that I created, like I'm not going to be able to not continue making comics. Like, it's okay. Well, this is what I am now. But then it's the money thing, and it's the, hiring and logistics of all of the stuff all the time. When you're working with different artists, is it very much like you do the full script, you send it to the artist, they do all the artwork, they send it back, you get it to the letter, and then it's a book? Or is it like the Marvel process of like, hey, I've got this story, artist, creator, drawing person. Let's talk through this and figure out the issue, like which approach is yours, or does it differ?
I'm definitely a full script guy. I've tried to do the Marvel style, and actually I find that most artists don't really, that I've worked with at least, don't dig on that. They would ask me for more details or want me to kind of fully flesh it out a little bit more. I may find one, in the future that works like that, but most of the people I've worked with have been fine with full script. They always have, full reign to change anything. If I'm getting too wordy or something like that, make it work.
Yeah.
Some will ask me questions before they even do it. Some are just like, listen, John, that panel doesn't work. I'm just changing it. And that's fine too. Unless it's something I'll definitely highlight, like she needs to be holding this object in her right hand because it's in the next scene, something like that.
Yeah.
But most of the time, as long as you give them, you know, you give them some creativity in the process too. And then most artists send me thumbnails, which I kind of browse over and say, okay, if it looks like, well, you know what, there's 3 word balloons in that panel, and you really didn't give me enough space or something like that, I might tell them. But most of the if I have any success, it's that I find the right collaborators to work with. I mean, you've seen the art on our books.
Yeah.
We do well for ourselves there, and all these amazing artists, you know, they take my 3 word panels and make them into amazing scenes. You know, he jumps off the building and they're like, okay, I got you. You know, they change whatever. So I'm definitely not like Alan Moore level, unless again, it's something that this specifically, he needs to be looking this way or something like that, because he's going to get hit in the back of the head or something like that.
Yeah.
Most of the time, again, they know they have free reign. So I'm definitely a full script kind of guy though.
Okay. Yeah. I always find it fascinating because I am a visual person anyway. Hence why I do a video show and not an audio only show. But if you listen to audio, thank you. But like anytime I'm creating, I see the stuff that I'm creating, and I've gotten feedback from some artists that I've sent some scripts to, like, hey, you know, I'm broke as shit, but I would love to just see, like, if you'd be willing. It's like a 4-pager. It's, you know, I've already got everything. Like, you don't need to think about anything. I just need you to draw the thing. Like, I've got page layouts, I've got panel breakdowns, I've got all the stuff. And they've been like, yo, this is way too much. Like, where do I get to have my, like,
right.
Yeah. And so it's like, ooh, okay, maybe I'm too prescriptive. Maybe I need to back off a bit. And it's funny because, like,
again, it depends. You have to know your collaborators before talk to people. And again, most of the collaborators I work with, I've worked with either repeatedly, known them for a while. So I'm very fortunate again in that regard.
Yeah.
If it's a newer collaborator, I definitely give them more. I might give like a reference and say, again, this is totally up to you. You know, let me know what you think. But you do find artists who appreciate that. I have a buddy who's a writer who he does thumbnails. He knows if he's designing a battle, he wants to, you know, show you where the sword's going in. His art team is okay with that. So you may just find that you do find a collaborator that wants to work that way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because, like, with Barricade Brigade, Chris and I are very much Marvel process about it. Like, we FaceTimed yesterday and we were just like spitballing ideas back and forth. And then it was like, all right, so I think what I'm hearing is, and like, I'll type out the dialogue. And then he was starting to do thumbnails as we were working through this story in those first like 10 pages or whatever we did. But it started as like, here's where I think we need to hit like the major beats and pay. So it's very much, you know, like we do the co-collaborator thing for credits instead of like, oh yeah, I'm the writer and he's the artist. Cause it feels like that's taking away from what the two of us are giving to each other. And so, like, even though I can be very prescriptive sometimes he's like, yeah, like, if you have a specific, you know, if you want this panel to be an over the shoulder from the right looking down, like, if you have specific things, give them to me and I can do it. And like, if you don't have specific things, I'll just have fun and play around. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, it's just a thumbnail. Like, I can update it and do a different one. And, you know, even looking at the document that he started, he's got a couple pages that we talked about where he's got 2 different styles of like the page layouts in his thumbs. And so we get to talk about like, I think the vertical one might look better because it, you know, for word bubble placement and stuff, it just has better readability than trying to cram it into a horizontal thing. But that's stuff that we don't know until we see the thumbnails and stuff. Right. So like, because you're a script first person, and I know you mentioned that you usually get thumbnails, but how do you approach the conversation if you've had it of like, this is not at all the direction I thought I was giving you? Like, do you get that as it's coming, or do you get like all the pages at once? Like, how would revisions go? How do you work through that?
I've very few times if I had to call for a revision, if it was something completely like they put the wrong person in the scene and they're not in the scene or something like that. Most of the time in the digital age, you know, you can kind of zap something out, flip a panel around, you know, shrink a panel here and there. So most of the time I'll ask the artist first. Like, I had one recently where I needed to crop a panel to take something out, and I asked the artist, are you okay with me just doing that? I can do it in digital. I can make, you know, shrink the panel over or whatever, make it an inset. And she was like, yeah, it's your story, you know, no big deal. So most of the time I've had that conversation is work. If it's something I absolutely missed in the script, you know, I'll just kind of take that one on the chin, make the story work, maybe change the dialogue. Like this character was supposed to be talking first or whatever. We
Yeah.
can work with that. Most of the time artists are pretty good. Most of the time I get like 1 to 4 pages at a time, depending on the speed of the artist.
Okay.
A lot of times people will scan multiple and then send them over to me rather than one at a time. So that gives me a chance to look at it. And again, I haven't had, you know, too many major things where it's like, I'm fortunate too. I letter my own work. Bob
Yeah.
helped me learn that skill many years ago. So I can make that change pretty easily. Again, if it's dialogue or something else, or maybe the character looks a different way than I thought, expression wise, I can make, you know, we can make it work.
So you're like tweaking dialogue on the fly sometimes if you need to match the artwork that was given to you.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And again, that's benefit of being the letterer. As a matter of fact, I actually do it too often where I even if it's not a panel change that's needed, it's something after reading it, I prefer it that way because then I don't have to be, you know, locked into dialogue from the second the script is done.
Yeah.
I can change it. And I probably do it too often going out the door. And then, you know, before someone will proofread it and be like, hey, idiot, you didn't proofread this. That's how you usually know. I gotta slow down sometimes, but I actually like that because then once I see the characters interacting on the page and their you know, their body language and everything, I'm like, okay, oh, this is more like what he would say, or oh, you know what, Dan didn't give me enough room here, so let's have her just say a quick phrase here and then move that to the next. You know, that works when you're kind of the last one who gets to touch the page. So I would definitely recommend that for any writers. Take the dip, try lettering yourself at least. You'll get a better feel, and then you start to think of that as you write anyway. Oops, I added 25 words to this panel. It's not that kind of a panel, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that too, because then it gives versatility. And I think the more that as writers, you know, the script that I wrote that had all the very specific things was before I had ever started talking with Chris about Barricade Brigade. So I hadn't worked with an artist at that point. I was just a guy sitting in the corner of a brewery next to the river, like drinking beer, writing a comic. And so like, I also now know, you know, scripts that I've written that I've submitted to anthologies or whatever, they are different because I now understand, like, hey, giving a little bit of freedom for artists, at the very least, is a good thing. Like, that's better because they're the artist. Like, I'm not the artist for a reason, right? So like, let them flex their strength just as they'll let me flex my writing dialogue quippiness or whatever sarcasm bullshit that I'm trying to write.
Exactly.
So like, yeah, it's one of those, like, just, I don't have to be in control of everything all the time. And
it's good that you came to that realization early. You know, we all go through that phase as the writer where, oh, I'm so clever, my words are going to change the earth. And then you realize, like, it would have to be like an info dump page, like Jonathan Hickman info dump. If you really wanted this to work, and then nobody's going to read it. So stop being so clever. And sometimes it's just ignorance, right? We don't realize you can't get all that emotion and into a still page and oh, I want them to feel the character like this, and he's looking up at her like this. It's like, no, you know, let them kind of work it out, and the reader will draw their own conclusion. You got to build that over time. You can't, you know, do so much. It's not a novel where you can just kind of describe the scene, you know, for 40 paragraphs.
Right. Right. No one wants to be J.R.R. Tolkien. Love Lord of the Rings, and The Hobbit is probably my favorite book of all time. And also, no one wants to be J.R.R. Tolkien. And it goes back to, like, the industry thing of show, don't tell, right? Like, if I have to tell you everything, why am I writing a comic? Why aren't I writing a novella or a essay or whatever? Like it. So that was also a thing that I was hearing early on. And I was like, well, yeah, the pictures are going to show what I'm writing. And then I realized, like, oh no, stupid. That's not what that means. There's some things that don't need to be explicitly said. And this is a hyper specific. Chris, if you read my note about the clock in your short script that you sent me with the thumbnails, you can ignore it because you crushed it and I was being the overwriting person. So I apologize. Don't listen to that note. Do it exactly how you penciled it. Because I think it's this slow down thing, right? Like I have to, and as a reader, I do that. of I will read a comic and then I've always flipped through first just to see color palette work and what the action, what I'm getting into, and then I'll go back and I'll read it, and then I'll go back and I'll read it and really pay attention to every detail in the background. Like that's why it takes me so long to read comics,
Mm.
because I do that every single time. I can't help it, because I'm a craft process junkie, and so I want to understand how things are creating and coming together. But as a result, if I have an immediate thought, that first pass through of reading, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I need, this is a thought. And especially if he's asking me for feedback, but if I take time, because I read that script that he sent me with the pencils and everything earlier today, and it's just now as we're talking about that, I'm like, no, stupid. He was showing instead of telling. He didn't need to do that. And in the moment, I was just like, what if there was a clock? Like, what if we showed people that it was the time of night that it was? You don't need to. Everything's dark and he's reading by lamplight. Like, it's going to be inferred that it's nighttime, stupid. And that's just me getting in my own way. Like, how do you get out of your own way when you're writing scripts or talking with artists or anything like that?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. I don't think that I always do. I think sometimes I've, there's a much longer panel description, and then again, credit to my collaborators, they usually come back with something better, and I go, oh yeah, that is good. It doesn't need to be exactly like this. So, again, part of it's the collaboration process and enjoying that, and not just being like, the end goal isn't always just my vision. It's something that we can both be proud of at the end. So, swallow your pride a little bit and say, okay, again, unless it's something absolutely necessary to the story or a future story, then, hey, can we clean that up? Yeah, I don't always do it well, but I try to be much more sparse with my descriptions now. And I think that helps.
That's good. I like that. Speaking of, this is just a straight transition. There's no easy thing here. Child possession services. I want to talk to you about possessions. Is there a reason that you went this direct? Like, did you set out with like this could be a fun horror comic? Well, possessions are cool horror. Like, well, that's a fun subgenre. Like, did you intentionally go into that, or was it because of the social work that you just had the idea of dark and demented? Like, what if they were children possessed and there was a social worker for them?
Well, the idea really, I can't remember the exact way the name came, but a very common acronym in my field is C.P.S. When you talk about who's going to come in and help these kids, they were taken away from their parents or they're in the emergency room and we think they're abused, call C.P.S. C.P.S.
Yeah.
In where I live, it's also Chicago Public Schools, but the larger, part of the country would say that that's Child Protective Services.
Yeah.
So it really was just a flip on that. And it was just like child. And one day I was like, possession, I'm a genius. Oh, this is going to be great. The kids are possessed. And that's why they need a social worker. So I don't know exactly when that clicked, but it really was just that acronym that we always use in the field of social work for Child Protective Services. And then I was like, okay, well, what's going on with that? And again, credit to Bob. When we talked about it, I wanted to put in, again, a little bit of that inside baseball, because to me, the real story of C.P.S. isn't really the kids being possessed, which is cool and fantastical. And, there's horror elements to it and how the adults deal with it as well in this universe. I think we did a decent job of, but for me, it was more about when you work for a government run or government funded organization that has to help people, it always goes to hell. So there's, again, clever metaphor there. So a lot of it started from that background. Really is like, how the hell would we help kids really like this if this really was common around the world? And the easy answer for someone who's been in the field for 20 years is we do a shitty job of it, because that's what we do when we give them the bare minimum and we hope that they survive. We always say kids are resilient, but kids have to be resilient because adults don't take care of them. So that was kind of where it started, is having that background. And again, maybe being a little bit upset that I didn't change the world as much as I thought I would when I was working with kids, and how my career has gone. And it was pretty easy to kind of make this kind of bitter, embattled social worker in Connie Dar to kind of tell that story.
it's I think this is another one of those examples of you're telling a real world story, but you're setting it in a genre of horror with possessions and demons and hell and all of these things. But that's not the story. Like that's not the point of the comic. The point is her story and what she's going through. And it keeps coming up, which tells me that I need to pay more attention to it and spend some time like just staring at a wall thinking about it and going to Google of just the power of genre and using genre to tell super real stories of like they have to be resilient because we kind of suck.
Yeah.
And like taking that story and putting it into a comic book with demons and possession, but still telling like these kids have to be resilient because we kind of suck. And what does it look like if the person is aware of the suck and is part of the suck machine? And like how do like how do they help in spite of the machine sucking?
Yeah.
Like it's just I don't know. It's something that I don't think I typically think of. And maybe that's just because like I'm just writing a let's have fun comic that's got some like very prevalent undertones of businesses or monsters and big corporations and all this stuff. But like I don't know. I feel like that's something that I just need to sit and chew on. Because it keeps coming. Like this is now, I think the third week in a row of streams that this idea of taking real stories, putting them in a fantastical genre and telling those stories through like, yeah, there's demons and stuff too, but also it just is so it's fascinating to me to see those things play out and see just how deeply I can be tricked into like, it's a possession story. And you're like, no, it's a adult suck. Children need us story. And it's like,
Yeah,
oh,
because I always joke when people ask me what it's about at a convention, I say I'm a social worker by day, but I didn't think people would read stories about that. So I made them kids who were possessed. And yes, there have been times where I thought the kids I worked with may have been possessed. But again, I've sprinkled that kind of into my work. They say, write what you know, right?
Yeah.
And again, I was like, well, no one's going to read about, being a bitter social worker and that. So you gotta give them something.
Yeah.
And Drumsticks of Doom was very much the same way. It was very much a story about how band life didn't work out how I thought it would. And again, I didn't think people would read that. So I was like, well, there got to be werewolves. So I literally added a werewolf to their first practice. It was like, that was the opening scene. I got it now. What if a werewolf jumped through the wall? And I was like, well, why is the werewolf there? Oh, I got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just throw yourself into a funny scene and then, see what happens.
Is that like kind of your writing style? Is like, here's this thing that I want to tell, but I can't tell it this way. So how do I dress it up? And then where do I go from there once I do dress it up? Like, is that
I feel like most of my stories, when I'm like starting to get the seed growing, it's usually just like some sort of scene, like, okay, it's the end of the world and this is happening. And then I kind of just, I'll see it, put in notes in my phone and check in with it later. And it's not until I kind of have that aha moment. Like for C.P.S, it was, oh, she's a social worker with possessed children. For LCS, it was, oh, they're collecting comic books after the apocalypse. And then for Drumsticks of Doom, again, it was, she's, kind of, her music life isn't going the way it was. And then this werewolf kind of comes through the wall. Well, why is the werewolf there? Well, because Black Sabbath is the most popular band in the world, and therefore they've changed the universe. And that's why this universe is different, right? So
yeah,
you kind of wait until you have that click moment, and then you can build from there,
Yeah. Yeah.
But often the time it's like one scene. Bulletproof Chicken started like that, just a funny story Bob and I were joking about after a convention. And then it was like, oh, wait, how do we reverse engineer it into a larger story? The best part of comics. Sometimes you can, you and I could throw down an idea, sketch it and it'd be a comic by tomorrow morning if we drew it out. And that, I think you kind of need to hang on to the, that kind of creative style with comics. But again, if you do sit on it for a little while, sometimes you can kind of, let it, grow a little bit. And that's, I often have stories, ideas in minds for years and years, and then just kind of wait till they grow. And often until I find the right collaborator to really kind of, make them bigger.
Yeah. Now, because this is the finale, does that mean that this is making way in the part-time roster for a new series?
So unfortunately, 2025 is about wrapping up series.
Okay.
I've part of what I've realized in kind of our lesser successes, some would call them failings, I'll call them less not as successful series, is that maybe we are balancing too much.
Hmm.
And I've kind of strung poor Dan Doherty around for many years. And I think we need to finish Drumsticks of Doom. I think next year we need to focus on one series. That's our flagship title. Let's wrap that up, get it into its second trade, see where that goes. And then we can either come back to these other stories or continue new stories. But for one whole year, I say that now, and I'll probably have 7 books next year.
Right.
I'm going to focus on, this is the final leg for Drumsticks of Doom. We're a big announcement for you here. I've only announced in our Substack. We are going to be in Lunar distribution for Drumsticks of Doom. Massive Indies Publishing through Massive Comix has picked us up. So tell your local shop if you want to order it. It's in their preview guide right now. So the first arc will be December, January, February, March. We'll see how that does for the first 4 issues. So again, that part of that, also kind of the natural wrapping up of some of these series, it's really led me to believe next year is about Drumsticks of Doom, carrying it to its finality as best as we can, and then maybe coming back and seeing, well, what's the next, story we want to continue or create in 2027.
That's awesome. And super exciting for Drumsticks of Doom. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Like that feels like a huge, how did that happen?
Well, thankfully, Massive saw a need for it in the industry. They opened up submissions. I talked with Dan about it. We've pitched to a couple other publishers and nothing's really come of it. We like having creative control.
Yeah.
The few times we've been offered a contract, we felt like we gave up too much to not get much, and we passed on them. And I'm so glad I have a seasoned veteran co-creator in that who could kind of say, hey, slow down. I talked to some other, mutual friends we had, and, everybody's answer was, except for me, I was excited. I was like, we're going to be in distribution and let's do it. Yeah. And they were like, slow down, think about it. And they were right. So fortunately we kind of came to the right situation, because Massive really, they want nothing to do with your book except for to see that you have a good book that can come out at a fairly regular schedule. Okay, we have that. We're already 7 issues in, right? We can we can do that. We can have, an issue every month or every other month, have some trades out, and then you kind of pitch them the completed product as much as you have. And they were excited about it. They said, again, we want no creative control. We just take a small percentage of the distribution fee. And you can pull it at any time. Their contract is very friendly. So all of that was really a credit to them. They said, we see your product. We have no notes for you on it. We're not telling you to change anything. We don't want to know what the end of the story is or anything. We just want to know, that you have a quality product that we think can be sold through Lunar distribution. And then we'll set it all up for you behind the scenes. All you need to send us is, fill out this form with the information and we'll get it listed. And it was easy.
That's awesome.
And again, great that it kind of all came together that way, but we didn't have to, do a full pitch or tell them the whole story. Or again, some submission platforms want you to tell, everything you got, with no guarantee of them picking it up. Right. They're just like, tell us your entire idea and then we'll decide if we like you or not. They were just like, oh yeah, submit it to us. And they picked it up.
That's awesome. That also sounds like the dream.
Right?
We'll do all the legwork for you. We'll do the behind the scenes. We'll get you into the catalogs. We'll just take a percentage of the sales. You get everything at okay.
Yeah. I was like, I kept looking it over am I seeing this right? Now I will say, because again, it's shops need to get their cut, right? So it's like really any distribution deal is going to be like that. The biggest discount is to the retailer because that's how the retailer makes their money.
Yeah.
And then there's a percentage that goes to the distributor. In this case, it's Lunar. And then now again, you're creating just a little bit more of a slice of the pie to Massive to be the middleman for you. So they do a catalog. You lay it out, you type up all your infographics and everything like that, all your details. and they list it and send it out to the shops, which is great, right? Because that's a direct channel saying these are the massive indie titles. Do you want to pick them up? But outside of that, not a ton of, you know, support or marketing and stuff like that. So I don't want to think, people, they'll have you on billboards or anything like that. Like, you still have to be an independent company and take that. You got to email places, post on social media, all that stuff that you're regularly doing, but you have the opportunity, for shops to kind of just cold, pick up your book, which is great.
That's cool. Yeah. Good for you guys. And do you have a FOC?
We have a final order cutoff date of October 27th for the first issue.
Cool. Well, that'll be something that I blast out and make sure people know about, because that's super exciting. So is it going to be the same covers that were part of the Kickstarter campaigns, or are you like doing all new covers? How does that work?
It will be the same covers, which I know for some people who got them on the Kickstarter, that might be kind of a bummer, maybe wanting some different. It just didn't make sense with the percentage that we're giving up to put more into it.
Sure.
So unfortunately, no, we might maybe with the trade do something different for the retail trade, but for now, it's going to be the same, which, hey, I'm fortunate. I had some great covers, so I'm happy they're getting out on the shops.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I don't know. I'm not I need to own 74 variant covers of the same book.
I'm not
person. So for me, I think of that and I'm like, oh no, like that's great, because then the Kickstarter people still have the ability to be like, I had that a year and a half ago. Like,
right.
Good for you. Like, I'm this snooty hipster with my scarf and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and like, plus that, then if you decide, like, if the first one does gangbusters and does really well, and Massive is like, yeah, like give us the next 2 arcs and we're going to do the whole thing. Well, you can start thinking about doing something crazy where it's like, these are Kickstarter exclusive covers because retail is going to be different. Like, then you can add that collectability to it to like increase. There's a lot then that opens up.
And that was the other thing with Massive too. They, no problem. You kickstart, however you fund your book, get it to us. Again, I've had other places that were like, well, you can't, if you crowdfund it, then we won't, people won't buy it through the stores, which I got. But again, you need that foundation of those first direct orders to really make any of these comics work these days. So again, Massive's very easy to work with. They aren't accepting, a ton because they still, they can only list so many, but just a small fee to get it going. And
that's awesome.
We're off and running. Yeah.
Great. Good for you. That's awesome.
It's been a long time coming. I did start back with part-time comics with the intent of reaching the goal of getting into shops, of being published, so to speak.
Yeah.
It was very apparent in those first 2 years that just wasn't going to happen. So I've been happy to just continue to self-publish, but it's nice because this is like really a distribution deal. It's our name. It's still our company on there, right next to the Massive Indies logo that we're going to add to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it feels like, this is the way you wanted to do it. And now it's out in the world. It was a nice feeling when they emailed back.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's especially if you weren't like, if you were just focusing on the crowdfunding thing and then this happened to work out besides, like that's full circle win-win. I'm stoked for you. That's awesome news. And thanks for breaking it here. That's exciting.
There you go.
I always like having exclusive news that I can then, gain clout about, because I'm all about that clout. I am not at all. I am about horror and I am about indie comics. And so I'm stoked that you have combined both into child possession services. Yeah, I almost did child protective services there. Looking at the Kickstarter, you've got 91 backers. You've got 11 days to go. You're just about halfway funded. My simple brain math says that that's like 47% funded.
You're good.
That's what we'll say. But 11 days left. Like, I know you talked about the first one did gangbusters and did really well, and then the second one dropped and the third one dropped. Like, how does this compare to the rest, and how do you deal with that?
Well, all of our Kickstarters for the last, 16, 18 months have been very similar to this one.
Okay.
Drumsticks of Doom is kind of its own animal, like I said. But even that one, still, we get our amazing, awesome, loyal backers within those first 3 days are usually the big push, and then still, thank you. It's still a grind there in the middle. No
Yeah.
matter how we package it, no matter if we do incentives, to back or discounts early to back, this is just how people back us. And you know what? I'm just grateful in the end that we almost always cross the line by the end. So we definitely have those who rush in early, then a slow trickle, and then the end, usually gets us over. This one is just a similar. It's a little slower than the other ones. We usually get 50, 60% in that first week.
Mhm.
But times are tough right now for everybody. We understand that. We've also had to go up a little bit on budget because of so many things. Shipping is out of control. Cost of supplies is out of control. There's been a lot of reasons. So that's part of it too, is that most of our Kickstarter goals have went up like 10% as well. So how do you account for that when, backers are a little less, backers who are coming are paying, a little less.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of factors that are driving everyone's campaigns down 15 to 20%. So, but it's always this rush at the beginning, which is nice. And then that slow trickle and then the end. So we usually do about a 3-week campaign now, because we kind of know, people treat it as a pre-order. They come and they're like, oh yeah, I'll back it when I'm able to, or if I'm able to. And they'll kind of slowly trickle in over those 3 weeks.
Yeah. It's funny because that pre-order terminology, I had never thought of Kickstarter as being like, yeah, you can pre-order the book this way. And then all of a sudden in the last like 3 months, I feel like I'm seeing it all over the place. And it must feel like that Marilyn Manson rumor when we were in like junior high with no internet and no social media. And yet all of us heard that same exact rumor.
Exactly.
Like, you know exactly the one I'm talking about.
The pre-order.
But like I feel like the terminology to pre-order honestly helps. Like I was using it when I have a lot of friends that don't comic. And I'm like, well, I comic heavily. So, but they were like, how does this work? What is Kickstarter? Tell me that. And it was like, okay, so my go-to was like, how like public radio, because I worked in public radio, is like, all crowdfunded and you pledge. And if you pledge at $25 a month, you get this handy dandy t-shirt. It's like that, but you get this handy dandy comic and you can do different things to get different stuff. And like, oh, okay. So like I get it like right away well, no, because we got to print it and we got to get proofs and we got to make sure everything's okay. And then we got to get the mailing supplies and we got to ship everything. And then I got to wait for the shipping delays to happen and all of those things. Adriano, I'm still waiting to hear if it made it to Canada. But like, you got to do all this stuff and all the things. And for some reason, the people that I was like, well, it's kind of like a pre-order, right? Like we have this is our pre-order time and we're collecting funds to make the thing happen. And then as soon as we get them, you're the first to receive it. And then anybody else can buy it from us at cons or on websites eventually, maybe, or whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, okay, cool. So where do I go to do that? I'm like, I had this like 10-minute setup thing. And now all I have to do is say it's a pre-order and it suddenly makes sense. So I guess it's a good thing that everybody caught on to that terminology working.
I mean, the comic fans knew that. We've known that for years, right? That's kind of part of our normal business with comics. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. The other people you're trying to bring in at large don't understand that. So you do kind of have to make sure that you're making it friendly and teaching those who might not know. And it's not, and then you start again, when you bring in a website like Kickstarter, it's ingrained to people like us, but there's still many people who have no idea what that means.
Yeah. And crazy love to all the people that created a Kickstarter just to back our book. I always loved because I'm the nerd that's like, where did these people come from? I don't know these people. And I would, open it up and be like, oh, first backed. Oh shit. We're the first product we ever backed. That's insane.
That's always such a great feeling. Or those that come in and back, like for us, we have tons of books. Yeah. So they'll come in and be like, give me all your books. They get that tier and you're just like, wow, they wanted all our stuff. That's amazing. Yeah. Or you get the guy who's back 5,500 and yet he's back, it's like, well, that's a good feeling too.
Yeah. I just want to know, like, how do you back that many books and what tiers are you backing them? Is everything digital and all digitals are like $5? Because how do you afford that? How long have you been on Kickstarter? Like, what?
Can we be friends?
Right. Do you want to be an angel investor in an upcoming punk rock comic? I would love to talk to you more offline if I'm not going to use the username. And I don't remember what it is, but I know that I had to message him to fill out a survey. And I was like, you have 1,200 projects back. I'm messaging you. It's fine. I appreciate the support and I'm glad that he was along for the ride. Okay, those are my notes for you. But as you know, I'm not quite done with you yet. We got two more things. The first is I'm going to take a screenshot. And this is going to be the YouTube thumbnail. And I got to make sure I get my Argyle picture in here. And we will go 1, 2, 3. And then the other one is I love doing this show because I get to talk to creators with all sorts of backgrounds, all different experiences, all different walks of life. And yet we all share the commonality of loving comics and indie comics and creating. And so as part of that, I want to make sure that any message you have from your experiences gets to be heard. So this is a space for you, Jon, to just share whatever message. It could be a sales pitch for C.P.S. It could be I don't know anything. I don't have any easy other. I was going to make a Chicago thing, but then I couldn't think of any Chicago team but the Blackhawks, and I boo Blackhawks. It could be why the Blackhawks are a better hockey team than the Sabres, which if you watch hockey is it's going to be I think another rough season for us. But that's just where we are. Anyway, this is the time for you to share your message, not me go on rants about hockey. So I'll shut up and you can take it away.
Well, I thank you for having me again. I know I've been working on comics for 16 or 17 years. I don't make much off comics, but this is the reason I do, is to make connections, to talk to people, share the books, share the stories. Because I think if you don't kind of slow down and do that, if you're only focused on your financial goals in comics or how many comics you sell, you're going to miss a lot of the fun along the way. So I'd still enjoy all these parts of it. Again, even kind of just coming on here and talking about how we got here and where we're going. I enjoy it. I always encourage people, if you're new to making this, reach out. People helped me when I was new in comics. I want to help other people. Again, that's what I'm here for. The interaction. This is something I still do as a hobby business-ish. So I always love helping people. Again, as so many people helped me, I wouldn't be here without dozens and dozens of amazing, people in and outside of comics that have helped me. So of course, don't hesitate. If you see me, I'm one of the few people on earth who still enjoys social media. So I'm always on all the social media. So hit me up there. Hey, Jon, I'm launching a Kickstarter. What do you think of this? I'm always happy to kind of talk shop with people.
That's great. And for anybody curious, I do have both the campaign and your link tree with all of your socials in the description. I also, selfish plug, because you're watching my show, have a link where you can go vote for me in the CBC Awards. That's the Comic Book Community Awards, where a rad organization goes out to YouTube and says, holy crap, there's a lot of shows about comic books. Let's celebrate that. And I was nominated and I'm a finalist in the most engaging host. So if I'm engaging with you in these shows, you can vote for me until October 13th. And then they'll announce the winners in November. And I love trophies. So that would be cool. Also, though, Jon, this is great. Anytime that I can have you back on or talk to you, social media, whether it's comments on Substack or whatever, because I'm spending more and more time there. I always love talking to you. I appreciate your just unwavering support. I can always count on notifications on YouTube being a comment from you. And so I appreciate you just being an active member of this whole indie comics long box punk thing. So thank you for all of those things and for being in my comic eating watermelon. I appreciate that too. All of the things, you're the best. So I hope to see C.P.S. fund sooner than later, mainly for your anxiety, but also because I think it's a cool freaking story and I can't wait to get my hands on it. That's going to be it for this stream. It's Sunday, so go do what's good for you, punks, and read some indie comics because we are out of here.